Okay, this is a reaction video to the new Netflix series 1899, which has been created by the two people responsible for Dark, which, in my opinion, is one of the best series that I've ever seen. And so obviously I was looking forward to this new program, which is also broadcast by Netflix. So I've watched episode 1, which is called The Ship. I've not seen anything else online in terms of that might give me spoilers as to the nature of the succeeding episodes. I've just seen episode 1 so far. I'm not going to actually utilize any footage from the program, and I'm not going to really be talking a great deal about the actual storyline itself. I'm going to focus on the two main characters that we've been introduced to so far. The captain of the ship, who's called Ike, and the character of Maura Franklin, who is one of the passengers. And I want to talk about the naming process first of all. Especially the naming for Maura or Maura. But first of all, you've got Ike. He's the captain, and his name is an anagram of the word key. So that's clearly going to play some sort of part in the rest of the story. But I want to focus on Maura. Her full name is Maura Franklin. Maura tends to be the kind of name that you would associate with Ireland. And it actually means the star of the sea, which is very appropriate given the subject matter of the series. So it's a name that's associated with the Virgin Mary in Roman Catholicism, because she's the guiding star for the mariner, but she's also the guiding star for the Christian in his or her journey towards salvation. So that's an interesting choice straight away. The surname is Franklin, which immediately got me thinking about Benjamin Franklin, the American scientist and one of the first presidents of the USA. But it also got me thinking about something else, and I'm wondering if there's any connection here, because we see early on, or we hear early on, Maura reciting a poem. The poem's by Emily Dickinson, and it goes like this. In fact, I'm going to read you the whole poem, because I don't think we hear the last stanza, so I'm going to read it off the screen. The brain is wider than the sky, for, put them side by side, the one the other will contain, with ease and you beside. The brain is deeper than the sea, for hold them blue to blue, the one the other will absorb, as sponges buckets do. The brain is just the weight of God, for heft them pound for pound, and they will differ if they do, as syllable from sound. So Maura recites the first two stanzas at the beginning of the episode. Like I say, that poem is by Emily Dickinson. Dickinson's interesting as a kind of feminist writer of the 19th century. Someone who kept herself very much away from society, just in her own room, and possibly suffered some sort of mental disturbance. It could be something like agoraphobia, for instance. And one of her early mentors, somebody who offered suggestions in terms of reading material, for example, was a young law student, and his middle name was Franklin. So I'm wondering if that's another little clue that's been planted there. In terms of literature, there's another clue as well, which is a visual clue that we see early on in Moira's cabin. And it's a copy of Kate Chopin's novel, which is called The Awakening. And no surprises for guessing in which year The Awakening was published. Yes, it was 1899. Again, Kate Chopin is another feminist writer, and when it came to The Awakening, she didn't really, as far as I can remember, she didn't write anything after that. The gatekeepers didn't like that work. It's about a woman who undergoes a kind of spiritual awakening. She's in a marriage, but she basically gets involved with another man. And so the awakening, in this sense, links, of course, with the exhortation that we hear in episode 1 from a character who I gather is Moira's father. This is the Anton Lesser character who says, "Wake up." And in terms of that exhortation, it's quite clear that it can have two meanings. It just means wake up, as in, wake up from sleep or from dreams. But it can also mean wake up in the sense that, for instance, the character of Neo wakes up in The Matrix from a false reality. So when it comes to that particular book, I should also mention that The Awakening ends with the main character drowning herself in the Gulf of Mexico. So again, we've got a link with the sea, with death at sea in this particular case. Just another possible connection as well, which came to me. This might not have any bearing whatsoever on it, but it's the name Franklin. The name Franklin suggested to me straight away the Franklin's Tale in Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. If you're not familiar with that particular story, just to briefly summarize it, it's about a married couple where the husband goes away for some time, leaving the wife on her own, and she becomes involved with another man. So it's this idea of infidelity. And to rid herself of this potential suitor, she presents him with what, on the face of it, you would consider to be an impossible task. And that task is namely to rid the sea of the black rocks. The story's set in Brittany, so it's the black basaltic rocks, no doubt, in that area. And the suitor employs the services of a magician who manages to achieve this for him. So basically, the wife is left in this impossible position of she's agreed to basically give in to him if he can perform this feat. And she mentions this and explains this to her husband, and he says, "Oh, well, you better do it then." But basically, to cut a long story short, the story ends happily because she doesn't go through with all this. I mean, her virtue remains intact. So yeah, I'm wondering if that's connected as well with this particular episode, Franklin. And there's one other literary reference I want to mention here, and that is right at the end of the episode. There's the incidental music is White Rabbit by Jefferson Airplane, and the lyrics of that are clearly inspired by the Lewis Carroll book Alice in Wonderland. And leaving aside all those elements, such as the use of drugs to make you bigger and smaller and all the other adventures that Alice goes through, and don't forget she falls down this rabbit hole, which is a bit like the vortex that we see in episode 1, this whirlpool. At the end of Alice in Wonderland, what we discover is that everything that we've been reading about has actually been a dream. So, of course, could this be another indication that all the events that we see in episode 1 are actually taking place inside the mind of Moira Franklin, that she is still perhaps in that mental institution, that she is not on board any ship whatsoever. It's all in her mind. That's certainly a possibility. So I've dealt with that aspect. Now I want to move on to something else, and that's the symbolism, especially the alchemical symbolism in this particular program, and certainly in this episode. I've seen the trailer, so I've seen other examples of it in the trailer. Okay, so as a student, as an undergraduate, one of the first books that I actually bought and read is this one, The Alchemists, by F. Sherwood Taylor. And I've always been interested in alchemy. And as a result of that, for example, I've got a number of books that are in that sort of similar vein. There's this book on Shakespeare's The Tempest, which is an alchemical study. One of the other works that is particularly important is Jung's book on alchemy, and I'm going to say a bit more about that in a moment. I suppose it's just a shame that Freud's Traumdeutung, the interpretation of dreams, wasn't actually published in 1899. It was actually published in 1900. But Freud is definitely going to be an influence here, because Moira is interested in the brain. But I'm going to, we see that from some of the books that are in her cabin in the same scene where we see the Kate Chopin novel. I'm going to talk more about alchemy because there's clearly alchemical symbolism going on in this particular episode. There are a number of inverted triangles that are bisected by a straight line, and that's a symbol for earth. We see it even in the bottom of the teacup. We see it in a woman's earrings. It's everywhere, basically. And in terms of alchemy, what's interesting is that although the process was basically involved trying to transmute so-called base metals like lead, for example, into gold, that was the process that they were trying to engineer. What Jung says in his work is that it's more about the process than actually that goal. In other words, it's more about perfecting the self It's about your own sort of spiritual progress, if you like. That's what alchemy is really about. And he invokes this idea of the hermaphrodite, this idea of combining male and female, yin and yang, all this kind of thing. It's about achieving spiritual and mental harmony. That's what alchemy is really about. Okay. But in alchemy, I just want to mention a few little things that might explain what we see in episode 1 of 1899. We see this black pyramid. Oh, and also we've clearly got elements of Greek mythology in this program. The boat is called the Kerberos, which is Cerberus, the dog that guards the entrance to the underworld. The other boat is the Prometheus, another one of the Greek gods. But we've also got Egyptian myth in amongst all this, because after all, we've got a pyramid. I mean, this is where the pharaohs resided before they went on their journey to the other world. And we've got the scarab beetle, which features in this episode, the green beetle, which has got connections with the afterlife, with birth, rebirth, all those kind of things. Let me get back to what I was going to say, though. Let me see. I've lost the track. So I was talking about myth. Let me see. Or about Jung and alchemy. Yeah, the alchemical sort of side of things. Right. The first stage in alchemy is called the nigredo, the blackening, and perhaps that's being referenced in the black nature of the pyramid, and the smaller version of that, which the little boy hands to Mora after he's released. So maybe that black pyramid is just the first stage in the alchemical process, because in alchemy, the final stage, the philosopher's stone, is actually red. It's a reddening process. And also the philosopher's stone would grant immortality to whoever possesses it. So again, there's this idea of immortality there. So those are the sort of elements of alchemy that are definitely playing out in episode 1 of 1899. I'm trying to think of any other aspects that I wanted to mention. I've mentioned the books that were on display. I've mentioned the naming process. I think those were the main sort of aspects that I wanted to draw your attention to, because I'm sure all of these things, many of these things, if not all of them, will play a part in the following episodes, which of course I look forward to seeing. I'm not even mentioning, the wonderful acting, the terrific use of this new technology, the volume technology, to represent the ship and the backdrop of the ocean. It's all marvelous stuff. The great music and the sort of ominous soundtrack. It's terrific work once again, and I expected no less from these two creators. Anyway, those are my sort of initial thoughts on that first episode. I think I probably will end up doing another video once I've watched the second episode in the series. I think there are 8 in total. Although, having said that, I probably will return back to episode 1 and rewatch it just for the hell of it. Anyway, I hope this has been of interest to you fans of 1899, or you potential fans of 1899, and it's goodbye from me for now.